We thought humans couldn't fight. We were wrong. Horribly wrong. Here's the thing about being a decorated military commander in the Galactic Council. You get used to winning. You get comfortable. You start believing your own propaganda. And that, my friends, is exactly where Commander Velcro of the Zentari Empire found himself on what should have been just another boring Tuesday in the year 2247, Galactic Standard Time. Velcro stood in the council chambers, all 6 of his arm appendages folded behind his back in what he thought was a dignified pose. His purple carapace gleamed under the artificial lights polished to perfection by his attendants that morning. Around him, the 73-member species of the Galactic Council muttered and chirped and buzzed their approval. They were discussing Earth. Again, always Earth. Commander Velcro. High Chancellor Morpton wheezed from her floating platform, her gaseous form swirling with what passed for excitement among her people. The Council has reached a unanimous decision. The planet designated Earth, Sol System, Orion Arm, will be annexed into Council territory. You will lead the operation. Velcro didn't even blink. With respect, High Chancellor, this seems like overkill. The humans haven't even achieved faster than light travel. Their weapons are chemical-based. Chemical. They still use combustion to propel metal slugs at each other. My grandson's school project is more advanced than their entire military. The council chamber erupted in laughter. The Klendathi delegation literally fell off their perches, their bird-like bodies shaking with amusement. Even the stoic Grimlock ambassador allowed himself a guttural chuckle that sounded like rocks grinding together. Precisely why this will be a simple operation. Morpton replied, her form pulsing with colors that indicated smug satisfaction. We've run the simulations 47 times. Maximum resistance duration is estimated at 4.2 hours. Their infrastructure will be intact. Their population will submit once they understand the futility of resistance. It will be the easiest annexation in Council history. Velcro wanted to argue. He really did. Something about this felt wrong, but when you've conquered 143 worlds without a single defeat, when your tactical record is studied in every military academy across 900 light-years, when species tremble at the mention of your name, well, you start to think maybe you are invincible. How many ships? He asked. 9,000. Velkar's primary eyes widened. His secondary eyes widened. Even his tertiary eyes, which he rarely used, widened. High Chancellor, that's more than we used to subjugate the entire Borlock Confederacy. They had actual plasma weapons. They had shields. They had artificial intelligence networks. The humans have what, nuclear fission? Satellites that can't even leave their own gravity well? The Council wants to make a statement, Morpton said, and now her tone carried an edge. Earth sits at a strategic location. 3 major trade routes will eventually pass through their system. We want the annexation to be so overwhelming, so absolute, that no one questions Council authority in that sector for the next 1,000 years. 9,000 ships, Commander. That is the order. And that, right there, was mistake number 1. But who's counting? The assembly took 3 weeks. 9,000 warships don't just materialize out of thin air, even for the Galactic Council. They pulled vessels from 70 different fleet groups. Dreadnoughts from the Zentari Home Fleet, carriers from the Klendathi aerial armadas, siege platforms from the Grimlock military stations, cruisers, destroyers, frigates, support craft. Every species wanted representation in the grand victory. Velcro stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, which in hindsight was maybe a bit of a pretentious name, and watched the fleet assemble in the staging area outside the Kepler system. It was beautiful, he had to admit. 9,000 ships representing the combined might of 73 advanced civilizations, all arrayed in perfect formation. The smaller vessels formed a cloud around the capital ships like insects swarming around giants. Energy signatures lit up his sensor displays like a festival of light. All fleet groups report ready, Commander. His second officer, Lieutenant Kreshna, announced. She was young for her rank, only 90 years old, but she'd proven herself capable in the Antares campaign. Her scales were still bright green, not yet dulled by age and too many battles. Set course for the Sol system, Velcro ordered. Standard approach vector. Let's get this over with. I want to be back home before the seasonal hibernation starts. The fleet entered faster than light travel in perfect synchronization. It was the largest military force ever assembled for a single operation in Council history. Historians were already writing the textbooks. Poets were already composing odes to the inevitable victory. Somewhere, probably, someone was designing the commemorative medals. The trip took 6 hours. They dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Sol system, Right on schedule, right on target, exactly as planned. Valkra's sensors immediately began cataloging the system. 8 planets. Well, technically 9 if you counted that weird dwarf planet the humans seemed oddly attached to. Primitive satellites in orbit around the 3rd planet. Basic radio transmissions, chemical rocket technology. Life signs on the 3rd planet? Valkra asked. Approximately 8 billion, Commander. The sensor officer reported. Concentrated in large population centers. No orbital defenses detected. No weapons platforms. No energy shields. Sir, they don't even have a unified planetary government. They're divided into nearly 200 separate political entities that apparently spend most of their time arguing with each other. More laughter on the bridge. This was going to be easier than expected. Open a channel, Velkar ordered. All frequencies. Let's offer them the chance to surrender before we have to get unpleasant. That's when the humans responded. And that, my friends, was when everything went sideways. The response from Earth came exactly 7 seconds after Velkar opened the channel. 7 seconds. Not 7 minutes. Not 7 hours. 7 seconds. Which should have been the first clue that something was very, very wrong. Unidentified vessels. This is Earth Defense Command. Sector 7, North American Union. The voice was female, calm, almost bored. Like she got calls from massive invasion fleets every Tuesday. You have entered restricted space without authorization. State your intentions immediately or we will consider your presence a hostile act. Velkra looked at Lieutenant Kreshna. She looked back at him. Around the bridge, his crew had gone silent. Restricted space? Hostile act? These primitives were threatening them. This is Commander Velkra of the Galactic Council Fleet, he said, trying to keep the amusement out of his voice and failing miserably. We are here to offer you membership in the Galactic Council. Surrender your planet peacefully and your species will be incorporated into our civilization with minimal disruption. Resist, and well, let's not be dramatic. You can't resist. You have 4 minutes to respond with your unconditional surrender. Silence for 3 seconds. Then, and Velkra would replay this moment in his nightmares for years afterward. The human laughed. Actually laughed. A sound somewhere between a cough and a wheeze that humans apparently made when they found something funny.
Oh, honey, you picked the wrong day and the wrong planet, the voice said.
Earth Defense Command Actual. This is Perimeter Station Sigma. We have 9,000, repeat, 9,000 hostile contacts at system edge. Weapons hot. Shields. We don't have shields, but you know what, we've got other stuff. Requesting permission to engage. Permission granted, Sigma. Light them up. Now Velkar had studied human technology. He knew they had nuclear weapons. Crude, inefficient, but technically capable of generating fusion reactions. He expected missiles. Maybe some kind of kinetic projectile. He did not, absolutely did not expect what happened next. The first ship to disappear was the Glorious Purpose, a Klindathi cruiser positioned on the outer perimeter of the formation. 1 second it was there on his sensors. The next second it just wasn't. No explosion. No debris field. No distress signal. Just gone. Sensor officer report. Velkra snapped. I don't know, sir. The Glorious Purpose it's like space folded around it and swallowed it whole. I'm reading some kind of gravitational anomaly where it used to be. But that's impossible. The humans don't have gravity manipulation technology. 3 more ships vanished. Pop, pop, pop. Like someone was deleting them from existence with a cosmic eraser. All outer perimeter vessels. All on the side facing that insignificant little blue planet. Evasive maneuvers. All ships, scatter formation. Velkra ordered, his earlier confidence evaporating faster than water on a plasma coil. Where are the attacks coming from? Everywhere. Nowhere. I don't, Commander. I'm detecting weapons fire, but it's not like anything in our database. Some of it's moving at relativistic speeds. Some of it's, ancestors preserve us. Some of it's moving through dimensions we can't even properly measure. A Grimlock dreadnought, 3 times the size of Velkra's flagship, suddenly split in half. Not exploded. Split. Like a giant invisible knife had just cut it down the middle. Both halves tumbled away, spilling atmosphere and crew members into the void. Return fire. All weapons target the 3rd planet. Velkra was shouting now. His carefully maintained composure shattered like cheap crystal. The fleet opened up. 9,000 ships. Well, closer to 8,900 by now, unleashed everything they had. Plasma lances that could melt through a kilometer of solid rock. Particle beams that operated at 98% light speed, fusion missiles with yields that could crack a moon. Enough firepower to sterilize an entire hemisphere. None of it reached Earth. Some kind of energy barrier. No, not a barrier. Something else. Something that bent space itself. Caught every single shot. The attacks just curved away from the planet like water flowing around a stone. Velcro watched in horror, as his most powerful weapons were redirected harmlessly into empty space. They have shields, Kreshna whispered. Commander, they have shields and we were told they didn't have shields. Those aren't shields. The sensor officer screamed, and yes, he was actually screaming now. I think they're manipulating space-time itself. That's technology we've been theorizing about for 600 years and can't make work. How do the humans have it? More ships vanished. Not in ones and twos anymore. In dozens. Some kind of invisible force was plucking vessels out of formation like a child picking flowers. The Zamthari heavy carrier Magnificent Vengeance simply imploded, crushed by gravity fields that shouldn't exist. A wing of Klindathi fighters turned on each other, their systems apparently hijacked, their weapons firing on their own fleet. Sir, I'm detecting multiple launch signatures from the planet's surface, the tactical officer reported. Conventional rockets. But wait, those aren't missiles. Those are crewed vessels. The humans are launching crewed vessels directly into combat. That's insane. Velker shouted. No species sends their people into battle when they could use drones. It's inefficient. It's wasteful. It's working, Sir, Kreshna said quietly. We've lost over 400 ships in less than 10 minutes. The human voice came back on the channel, still calm, still collected, still sounding like this was just another day at the office. Unidentified council vessels. This is Earth Defense Command. You were warned. You chose not to listen. We are prepared to continue defensive operations for as long as necessary. However, we're willing to accept your surrender if offered within the next 60 seconds. After that, well, we stop being nice. Velker stared at the display screen. 8,500 ships now. He'd lost 500 ships. 500. Against a species that supposedly couldn't even leave their own planet without using chemical rockets. Nice? He croaked. They call this nice? That's when the real fighting started. And if the last 10 minutes had been bad, what came next was about to redefine Velker's entire understanding of the word nightmare. The transmission came through from the science vessel, careful observer, positioned at the rear of the fleet formation, because science ships always stayed in the back where it was safe. Except nothing was safe anymore. Commander Velkra. Chief Scientist Torkmel's voice crackled over the comms, his usual academic calm replaced by something that sounded disturbingly like terror. Sir, we've completed preliminary scans of the third planet. Commander, Earth is a Class 12 death world. Repeat, Class 12 death world. How did intelligence miss this? Velkra felt his blood, which was more of a thick paste than actual liquid, run cold. That's impossible. Class 12. There are only 3 known Class 12 worlds in the entire galaxy and none of them support intelligent life. Check your instruments. I've checked them 4 times. Sir, Earth's gravity is 0.98 standard. Their atmospheric pressure is 3 times what we consider comfortable. Their oxygen concentration is toxic. They have weather systems that generate enough kinetic energy to level cities. Their oceans are filled with sodium chloride. Do you understand what I'm saying, Commander? These humans evolved in conditions that would kill most council species in minutes. Oh no. Velkra pulled up Earth's environmental data on his command display, data that intelligence had apparently skimmed over because surely primitive species couldn't be dangerous. His primary eyes widened as he read the numbers. Then his secondary eyes widened, his tertiary eyes just closed because they couldn't handle the stress. Earth's surface temperature ranged from -89 to +58 degrees Celsius. Their atmosphere was 21% oxygen, which was literally poisonous to half the species in the council. Their gravity well was nearly double what most civilized species considered habitable. And the humans, these insane humans, they just lived there. They were born there. They thought it was normal. Sir, incoming fast movers, the tactical officer shouted. 37 small craft human design approaching at. That can't be right. They're pulling 42 Gs in those turns. No pilot can survive 42 Gs. Velkra snapped. The internal organs liquefy. The brain hemorrhages. Basic biology. Human biology apparently disagrees, sir. The human fighters. And Velker used that term loosely because they looked more like flying bricks with engines strapped on. Tore through his formation like predators through a school of prey fish. They moved in ways that violated every principle of tactical flight doctrine. Sharp turns that should have killed the pilots instantly. Acceleration that should have turned them into paste against their seats. And they were laughing. The comm channels picked up their communications, and the insane humans were laughing and whooping like they were having fun. Fox 2, one human pilot shouted, whatever that meant, and a Klendathi destroyer just ceased to exist in a ball of nuclear fire. Splash one bogey, another human voice yelled. These alien ships got no maneuverability. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. A wing of council fighters moved to intercept. They were piloted by the Yenth, a species with 4 eyes and reaction times 3 times faster than most organic beings. The humans blew through them like they weren't even there. 5 Yenth fighters destroyed in as many seconds. How are they moving like that? Krishna whispered, watching the display in horror. Tarkamel's voice came back, shaky and horrified. Because they evolved under 0.98 gravity. Their bones are 3 times denser than ours. Their muscles are adapted to constantly fighting their planet's gravity well. What we consider crushing G-forces, they experience as mild discomfort, and their reaction times, oh ancestors, I'm looking at biological data we captured. Their nervous system operates on electrical impulses, not chemical. They think faster than us. More ships disappeared. A Grimlock siege platform which had armor plating thick enough to wade through an asteroid field, was struck by something the sensors identified as a metal rod. Just a rod. No explosives. No energy weapon. A metal rod moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The kinetic impact punched through the siege platform like it was paper, and the rod just kept going, straight through 3 more ships behind it. They're throwing rocks at us. Valkyr's weapons officer sounded personally offended. Advanced. Very fast rocks. But rocks. And it's working. Sir, we're receiving a data burst from the Eternal Victory, the communications officer reported. The Eternal Victory was a scout ship that had tried to approach Earth's moon for a closer look. Tried being the operative word. It's a recording. Automated beacon. Oh no. Play it, Velker ordered, though part of him already knew he didn't want to hear this. The voice of Captain Neltro filled the bridge, distorted by static and what sounded like weapons fire. This is Captain Neltro of the Eternal Victory. We attempted a close approach to the human lunar colony. The colony is military, I repeat. Their moon is a military installation. How? They have mass drivers. They have fusion plants. They have, ancestors. They have soldiers in armored suits. The suits are 8 feet tall. The humans inside are using weapons that fire depleted uranium rounds, and they're just walking in vacuum like it's nothing. They boarded my ship. They're cutting through bulkheads with handheld plasma torches. How do they have plasma technology when intelligence said they don't? They're in the corridor outside the bridge. They're no, stay back, we surrender. The recording ended with sounds that Velikar really wished he could unhear. Commander, we're receiving casualty reports from all fleet groups, Krishna said, her voice barely above a whisper. 2,147 ships destroyed or missing. 3,600 damaged. Field Marshal Grontok is requesting permission to retreat. So is Admiral Kelmra. Sir, half the fleet commanders are requesting retreat authorization. We have 7,000 ships, Velker said, trying to convince himself more than anyone else. They can't. They're still primitives. They still use chemical rockets for basic spaceflight. We just need to. Sir, sensors are detecting a new launch from Earth. The sensor officer interrupted. Multiple launches. Hundreds of launches. Their commander. Their ICBMs. Intercontinental ballistic missiles. Nuclear warheads. Hundreds of nuclear warheads. They're launching their entire strategic arsenal at us. Velcro watched the display as hundreds of missile tracks appeared, arcing up from Earth's surface. Primitive technology. Chemical rockets. Nuclear fission weapons. Technology his people had abandoned 6,000 years ago as obsolete. And there were so many of them. Like watching a swarm of angry insects rising from a disturbed nest. Point defense systems. Engage, he ordered. The fleet's point defense lasers began firing, intercepting the missiles. They got most of them. Most. But when you launch hundreds of warheads, most isn't good enough. 37 missiles made it through. 37 nuclear explosions blossomed among his fleet like deadly flowers. Ships died. Not from the nuclear fire itself, which their shields could handle, but from the electromagnetic pulses that fried systems. From the debris that peppered hulls at high velocity. From the simple overwhelming violence of that many explosions in that small a space. Sir, incoming transmission from High Chancellor Morptin, the communications officer said. Oh good, the council wanted to chat. This should be fun. Velker accepted the transmission and Morpton's gaseous form appeared, swirling with colors he'd never seen before. Colors that probably meant something very bad. Commander Velkra, what is happening? We're receiving reports of massive casualties. How have you lost 2,000 ships to a primitive species? With respect, High Chancellor Velkra said, and he was surprised by how calm his voice sounded. They're not primitive, they're Deathworlders, and we just kicked a hornet's nest. A very large, very angry, very well-armed hornet's nest. That's when Earth launched their second wave. And this time, the gloves came off. The second wave didn't come from Earth. It came from everywhere else. Sir, multiple FTL signatures detected, the sensor officer screamed. And yes, everyone was just screaming now. Military discipline had gone out the airlock somewhere around the 2,000 casualty mark. They're coming from Mars, from the asteroid belt, from Jupiter's moons. Commander, the humans have colonies throughout their entire system and they all have weapons. Velkra's mandibles clicked together involuntarily, a Zenthari stress response he hadn't experienced since his first combat mission 70 years ago. They told us they couldn't achieve FTL. Intelligence said they were confined to their homeworld. Intelligence was wrong, Krishna shouted back. Or the humans lied. Or both. Does it matter right now? She had a point. The human ships that emerged from FTL were nothing like their atmospheric fighters. These were proper warships, ugly things that looked like someone had welded weapons to cargo haulers and called it a day. No elegant curves, no aesthetic design principles, just armor plating, weapons batteries, and what appeared to be attitude. Ships had attitude now, apparently. Velkral's day just kept getting better. This is Captain Rodriguez of the UESS Hammer of Dawn, a new human voice announced, male this time, with an accent that made every word sound like a threat. We've been watching you lot bully our homeworld for the past 20 minutes. Not cool at all. Now it's our turn. The Hammer of Dawn opened fire with what Velkra's sensors identified as railguns. Primitive magnetic acceleration technology, except these railguns were firing projectiles at .02 light speed, and when a tungsten rod the size of a cargo container hits a ship at that velocity, shields don't mean much. The Zenthari cruiser Magnificent Fury took a direct hit to its reactor section. The resulting explosion was visible even without sensors. All ships return fire, Velkar ordered. Target those human vessels. Show them what real military technology looks like. His fleet opened up with everything they had. Plasma lances, particle beams, fusion missiles, the works. The humans responded by doing something that made absolutely no tactical sense. They charged. Not away. Not evasive maneuvers. Directly toward the incoming fire. And their ships were fast. Impossibly fast. They accelerated like nothing Velkra had ever seen, pushing G-forces that should have been impossible for vessels that size. One human destroyer. UESS Reckless Abandon, which was apparently what humans named their military vessels when they wanted to give enemy commanders anxiety, took 3 plasma lance hits directly to the bow. The armor melted. The ship kept coming. Weapons at 60% capacity, the human captain reported over open comms. Casual as could be. Still got 40%. That'll do. The Reckless Abandon slammed into a Klindathi carrier at ramming speed. Both ships exploded in a fireball that registered on every sensor in the system. Suicide attack. The humans had just performed a suicide attack. On purpose. As a tactic. They're insane, Valkyr's tactical officer shouted. They're deliberately sacrificing their ships. And it's working, Kushna added grimly. That carrier had 140 fighters on board. More human ships emerged from the outer system. These ones were different, smaller, faster. Stealth vessels that had apparently been hiding among the asteroids waiting. They carried weapons that the sensors couldn't properly identify until they fired. Then Velkar wished he still didn't know. Kinetic kill vehicles. Missiles that didn't explode. They just hit. At relativistic speeds. And when something hits at relativistic speeds, it doesn't need explosives. The energy of the impact does all the work. 3 Grimlock dreadnoughts, pride of their fleet, shattered like dropped pottery. A Yenth battle station, which was basically a mobile fortress, developed a hole clean through its center section. Straight through, the projectile punched through one side and out the other, and just kept going into space. All fleet groups, execute retreat pattern, Gamma. Velkra finally ordered, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. Fall back to rally point Theta. We need to regroup. Sir, the humans are pursuing, sensors reported. They're not letting us disengage. Of course they weren't. Why would anything go right today? The human forces pressed their advantage like they'd been studying Council retreat tactics for years. Every time a section of Velkar's fleet tried to form a defensive line, the humans hit them from a different angle. They used the gravity wells of planets for slingshot maneuvers. They hid in the rings of Saturn and ambushed ships trying to escape. They deployed mines and FTL exit vectors, something that was technically against 17 different galactic warfare conventions, and the mines were nuclear. Everything with the humans was nuclear. Captain Rodriguez to Council Fleet, the human voice came again. You seem to be leaving. That's smart. But here's the thing. You came to our home. You threatened our families. You tried to take our world, so we're not just going to let you run away and try this again in 10 years. We're going to make sure you remember this lesson. What does that mean? Velkar demanded. We're retreating. We acknowledge defeat. What more do you want? We want to make sure you never come back. The human fleet split into hunter-killer groups, fast attack craft, that pursued fleeing Council ships across the system. They were relentless. They were efficient. They were terrifying. When a Council ship's FTL drive failed, the humans were there. When a damaged vessel fell behind, the humans were there. When survivors tried to hide in the outer system's ice fields, the humans found them. Velkar watched his fleet die. Not in glorious battle, not in heroic last stands, but hunted down, picked off, eliminated with cold, calculated precision. These weren't soldiers fighting for honor. These were persistence predators, eliminating a threat. Sir, we've lost 5,000 ships, Kreshna reported, her voice hollow. More than half the invasion force. 17 fleet groups have been completely destroyed. 8 more are combat ineffective. Commander, we need to leave. Now. Velkar looked at the tactical display one last time. 9,000 ships he'd brought to this cursed system. 4,000 left, most damaged. Against a species that supposedly couldn't even leave their own planet. All remaining ships, he said quietly. Prepare for a FTL jump. Scatter pattern. Make for home by any route possible. And may the ancestors forgive us for what we've done here today. The Eternal Dominance's FTL drive spun up. Around him, the surviving ships did the same. They jumped, fleeing into faster-than-light space, leaving behind debris fields and wreckage and the shattered remains of Council arrogance. Behind them, Earth kept spinning, unconcerned, undefeated, and waiting for the next idiot who thought humans were primitive. 3 weeks. It took 3 weeks for Velkar to limp back to Council space with what remained of his fleet. 3 weeks of jumping through backwater systems, avoiding major trade routes, because word traveled fast and he didn't want to face the questions. The whispers about the mighty Commander Velkar who took 9,000 ships and came back with barely 3,000. The Eternal Dominance looked like it had been chewed up and spit out by something angry. Scorch marks covered the hull. 2 of the primary weapon batteries were just gone, torn away by a human railgun that had somehow threaded the needle through his defensive screen. The ship limped into Council Station Omega on auxiliary power, trailing atmosphere from a dozen hull breaches that the engineering crews had patched with whatever they could find. Velkar stood in the docking bay and watched the other survivors arrive. The Klendathi carrier Persistence, its landing bays empty of the fighters it once carried. The Grimlock Fortress ship, Unyielding Stone, which now had a very yielding hole through its starboard side. The Yent science vessel, Careful Observer, one of the few ships that had stayed far enough back to avoid the worst of it. Lieutenant Kreshna approached, her scales now permanently dulled from stress. She'd aged 10 years and 3 weeks. They all had. The Council is waiting, Commander, she said quietly. All 73 members. Full session. Every ambassador, every delegate, every military advisor. They want answers. I'm sure they do, Velkar replied. He straightened his uniform, adjusted his medals, and walked toward the Council chambers like a man walking to his execution. Which, politically speaking, he probably was. The chamber fell silent when he entered. 73 species, thousands of eyes, all focused on him. High Chancellor Morpton's gaseous form swirled with colors that definitely meant anger. Lots of anger. Maybe some disappointment. Definitely anger, though. Commander Velkar, she began, her voice echoing through the chamber. You departed 3 months ago with 9,000 ships, the finest fleet ever assembled in Council history. You were tasked with a simple annexation of a primitive world. You return with less than 3,000 vessels, many damaged beyond repair. Explain. Now, Velkar walked to the center of the chamber. He didn't use the podium. He didn't use the holographic displays. He just stood there, a broken commander in front of the civilization he'd failed. High Chancellor, esteemed delegates. I will be brief because the truth is simple. We were wrong. About everything. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Clendathi delegates ruffled their feathers in agitation. The Grimlock ambassador's eyes narrowed to slits. Earth is not a primitive world, Valkyr continued. It's a Class 12 death world that somehow produced a spacefaring civilization. The humans, they evolved under conditions that would kill most of us within minutes. Gravity nearly twice standard, toxic oxygen levels, extreme temperature variations, violent weather systems. They live there. They thrive there. And it made them strong. He pulled up a holographic display showing footage from the battle. Ships exploding. Human fighters pulling maneuvers that should have been impossible. The hammer of dawn ramming into a carrier without hesitation. They don't fight like civilized species, Valkyr said. They don't value efficiency or preservation of resources. They value victory, at any cost. They have weapons we abandoned millennia ago as primitive, and they've perfected them. Nuclear weapons aren't a deterrent to humans. They're a tactical option. Kinetic weapons aren't inefficient. They're devastating. And they're not afraid to die. Not even a little bit. This is absurd, the Grimlock ambassador growled. You had overwhelming numerical superiority. Superior technology. How could primitives defeat the Council fleet? Because they're not primitives. Valkyr snapped, his composure finally breaking. That was our mistake. We saw chemical rockets and assumed they were backwards. We saw nuclear fission and assumed they were centuries behind us. We never asked why a species stuck on one planet developed weapons capable of destroying that planet 12 times over. We never questioned why they had so many ways to kill each other. It's because their entire evolution was a fight for survival against their own world. He pulled up more footage. Human soldiers in armored suits boarding Council ships. Human pilots laughing as they executed impossible maneuvers. Human commanders calmly ordering suicidal attacks that somehow worked. They also lied to us, Valkyr added. Or we never asked the right questions. They have FTL technology. They have colonies throughout their system. They have military installations on their moon, on Mars and the asteroid belt. They've been preparing for this, for first contact with hostile aliens. They planned for it. They trained for it. And when we showed up with 9,000 ships thinking we'd crush them in 4 hours, we're ready. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouting over each other. Some demanding a second invasion with proper preparation. Others calling for immediate fortification of Council borders. The Clendathi ambassador was literally flying in circles, squawking in distress. High Chancellor Morputine pulsed with colors that finally settled on something that looked like resignation mixed with fear. What do you recommend, Commander? She asked quietly. Valkyr didn't hesitate. We leave them alone. Completely. We establish a quarantine zone around their entire system. 100 light-years in all directions. We update every navigation database in Council space to mark Sol system as forbidden territory, and we pray to whatever gods we believe in that the humans don't decide to come looking for us. That's cowardice, someone shouted from the Grimlock delegation. No, Valkyr replied. That's survival. You didn't see what I saw. You didn't watch humans sacrifice their ships and crews without hesitation. You didn't hear them laughing while they hunted us across their system. They're Deathworlders. True Deathworlders, and we're lucky, incredibly lucky that they let any of us leave alive. The vote took 6 hours. The debate was fierce. But in the end, fear won over pride. The Council passed Resolution 773, Sol system and surrounding space, designated as Exclusion Zone Omega. All Council vessels forbidden from entering. All trade routes rerouted. All contact prohibited. Humans were officially too dangerous to interact with. Valkyr retired the next day. He'd earned it, the Council said. Honored service, they said. They didn't strip his rank or his medals. They just quietly made sure he'd never command a fleet again. He spent his retirement on a quiet colony world, writing his memoirs. The title was simple. The Death World Mistake, a Commander's Confession. It became required reading at every military academy in Council space. Every officer learned about Earth, about humans, about the cost of arrogance. And sometimes on quiet nights, Valkyr would look up at the stars and wonder what the humans were doing out there. Building, growing, preparing. Because that's what Deathworlders did. They survived. They adapted. They thrived. And someday, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday humans would leave their system. They'd spread across the galaxy. And when they did, the Council would have to decide. Negotiate as equals? or start another war they couldn't win. Velker knew which option he'd choose. He'd seen Earth's teeth, and he had no interest in seeing them again. The galaxy was a big place. Plenty of room for everyone, especially if you gave the Deathworlders a wide berth and a respectful nod. Lesson learned. Finally. Expensively, but learned.